So finally, that brings us to HTML and CSS prototyping, right? Let's go to that slide there where we have, just keeps things consistent. HTML, CSS prototyping. That is what we spoke about earlier with the GA site. We just jumped right into the code. I showed these other three methods, and just to reiterate again, that you may pick and choose. You may do half of a style tile. You may wireframe on paper. You may choose one, you may choose them all. There's no right or wrong. But somewhere down the line, if we're talking about rapid prototyping, eventually we're gonna have some kind of tap example, like the one I just showed you guys, or something with HTML and CSS, depending on what you're trying to accomplish here. So, one of the best and most easiest ways in the world to get started in a world where Twitter Bootstrap exists for free. You can just go and download Twitter Bootstrap. It's great if you're a developer and if you've taken, I would say, like 8 hours of HTML and CSS, especially here at GA. We do some pretty intensive stuff.
We do.
But if you have like 8 hours, you'll be a pro at this. If you have no hours, I still think that you could figure this out. It would be a great place to be inspired. And so I direct you guys here to look at the Twitter Bootstrap page. What this is a project that was developed by Twitter. Basically, long story short, they found that every time they would start a new internal project, they would have, the same assets that they would bring into the project. The same kind of boilerplate framework. And they were like, instead of starting from a blank canvas every time, let's put together some reusable assets like a grid, like buttons, different components that we could reuse. They did this, and they found that their peers via GitHub, where people share code and other sources, were like, wow, we want this too. And so they now release it and maintain it as a project that is, I think, probably the most famous front-end framework that's out there right now. It's being used for everything. So what I want to show you guys now is how can we jump into HTML and CSS? What is the easiest way? I would say it's Twitter Bootstrap. So how do we get started? Quite simply, just going to the Get Started page here. Their documentation, super duper easy to understand. They recommend Sublime Text 2, so I'm going to go into this with a lot of assumptions. If this is totally brand new to you, HTML, Sublime, and all this kind of stuff, I would recommend re-watching this video or reviewing your notes after. But I'm just going to gun through the concepts. I think it will be far more better to just watch the concepts and not try to follow along with the code. They recommend Sublime Text 2, which is this program I'm going to be using. It is where we can code all of our projects, any single language. And then they have these two versions for a compiled and a source. I'm going to go here and download both of them to show you the difference. They're kind of same, but different. Little differences in there. If I open up my downloads and look at the two versions there. The source one, the one on the right, the source one comes with everything you see on the site, really. Like, take a look. Literally, the entire site itself is downloaded now, so that you can see how they develop their own site with Twitter Bootstrap. It's a concept people call eating your own dog food. So you can see, how did they do this? How did they make this button, etc. So they gave you the whole site and documentation. They gave you these images, which are really nice. You can see that these icons come with Twitter Bootstrap in inverted and black, so that you don't have to go and search for all those little icons in the web. And they give you a less package, which is for the more advanced people. It's just a preprocessor for CSS. If that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it right now. And some JavaScript stuff, like a carousel and button and all this stuff. Lots of stuff in there, as well as some really nice examples of what CSS Bootstrap looks like. And so if you go into Docs Examples, you can see there's the hero look. So essentially, you download this template, which is just kind of a really nice basic template. There's the fluid look. The fluid meaning that when I close the resolution of the browser, you can see not that responsive part, that's in both, but this part here where the grids are based on percentages, see how they're not fixed and they move with the width of the browser. I'll give you a starter template. So these are three places where you're like, if you're like, I don't even know where to start with code, just look at these, look under the hood. We're going to do that in a second. But if you're more advanced and you just kind of know how to use it already and you want the bare bones to start a new project, that's what we could do with, on the left, this download Bootstrap compiled. What you get in the compiled version is just the CSS, just the images, and just the JavaScript you need. They don't help you out much with that HTML stuff and documentation. But they do help you out here. The documentation is so great. They show you the structure. They break it down for you, how to get started with Bootstrap. And they give you some basic HTML. And what they're saying here is, if you want to use the compiled version, you can just copy this code. First, let me just say, everything I do from here on until the end of this video involves a lot of copying and pasting. So don't give up, is all I'm saying. And I'm pro copying and pasting, especially for this getting started. So super easy. If you know how to copy paste, you are a developer now. You can just copy in that code they give you. We need to know, a few things about web dev like that. I need to save that on my desktop, prototyping, in the Bootstrap thing here as index.html. So I can save it as index.html. And now when I have that in my index.html where I just saved it, let me go into here and open it. You'll see I get this, just really basic file, open up. But you're kind of ready to start going with the Bootstrap framework from here. It's all set up. This CSS includes the styles. You can see there's some basic styles here. And one of the first things you might want to do with your Bootstrap is just center your container. That's a really popular, most websites have a centered container. And you can see all I'm doing now is adding that, and it centers, right? So I didn't need to go write any code aside from knowing that I need to encapsulate all my content with here and centered. I could go into my CSS. I can make a new style sheet for this. Save this out as style.css. And I want to include that into my project. So now I can go and just reference this style.css like that. And now if I did that correctly, I should be able to modify what I have already. So I could say I want a color like that, right? I'm calling this container. And what that allows me to do is pretty quickly get some colors up. It's already centered, and you're ready to go. So that is the bare bones. That may have been confusing for a few people who, again, no code experience. But really, all I did was copy and pasted and some basic first day of CSS things. I made a CSS folder, and you're kind of ready to go. The framework goodness that they give you, if I look into the CSS, is this bootstrap.css thingy here. If I open this up, you can see that what they've done is they've given us some kind of normalize, some kind of grid system here, if you're familiar with the grid system. And then a lot of assets, a lot of base styles. I'm just kind of gunning through this. So that you just kind of start, with a base. You don't have to guess everything. And you're able really quickly to make these kind of layouts. So that's the main concept. We're going to go through and code one ourselves so you can see a little bit more. But Jordan, did I miss anything?
No, I just want to confirm that by default, when you use the Bootstrap CSS, that everything that you create is responsively designed.
Yes and no.
Because certain elements you need to adjust the media queries, right, and all of that.
Right.
But it's it's the beginnings of being responsively designed.
Right. I'm not sure if you're asking a question or.
No, just to clarifying, because
you're clarifying.
To make something fully responsively designed, you need to go in there and add your own elements, like whether it be different pictures that pop up at certain times.
Totally.
But it's giving you the framework to get started towards a responsive design.
Yeah, it gives you the framework, and actually, it does a little bit more. There are some responsive elements. So let me walk through it and show kind of how to get started if you were going to the general assembly thing that I showed you guys in the beginning. If we're going to make something more like that in 5 minutes, that's kind of what I'm going for, right?